To lead in a world that never stops evolving, you need insights from those who are driving change. Welcome to Breakthrough Innovations, where we bring together the top leaders and innovators who are reshaping their industries. I'm JL Heather, the Principal Executive Coach at Center, and in each episode I sit down with game-changing executives who share the strategies, insights, and challenges that fuel their success. In the next 20 minutes, you'll gain practical takeaways to drive your own breakthroughs. So if you're ready to stay ahead, join us here on Breakthrough Innovations. Hey everyone, welcome back. Welcome to this episode of Breakthrough Innovation. With us today is Robert Brown, the founder and CEO of The Customer Shop and the CTO of Mindshare Collaborative. Robert specializes in blending science and art to solve complex problems and find the patterns others don't. Robert, thank you so much for being here. We're really thrilled to have you on the show. I think this is going to be a fun conversation.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, no problem. So we always start off with what's your background, where do you come from, and what got you to your current role?
So I was in school studying science. I was pre-med, went biomedical engineering. I loved calculus, but I didn't want to stay in school so long. I realized spending the next 10 years in school to get advanced degrees just was not for me. So I left and focused on international business and trading. I learned that I hated the make money now mentality of Wall Street. So I went into IT. I liked the idea of blending art and customer experience for website design and customer journeys. I followed my wife home to New Jersey, and she's a dancer. And so that's the blending of the art. So, I've been helping her with her dance studio for 35 years. And my daughter's a dancer. My son likes to draw, but he just graduated with a degree in physics, and there's an art in physics. And so I like to look at those patterns in nature and be able to apply them to business and life.
I love that. And I think there's a lot of power in that patterns in nature. Like recently I read an article talking about how the patterns of tree branches, so that exposure to nature actually helps the healing process, especially with the mental aspects. So There's a real power in that nature connection in terms of how we as humans live our lives. So I love that. You mentioned uncovering the connections and patterns other might miss. What strategies do you use to approach problems from a fresh perspective, and how can other executives kind of foster that same mindset within their teams?
So I think a lot of people get caught up in KPIs. They get focused on, I need to solve this problem, not necessarily what caused it, but just I need to fix this right now. Because, in today's business, we've got this giant backlog of things that we have to address. And so when you finish this one, there's the next one. And sometimes actually understanding what the problem is means that you have to take a step back and understand what got you there. And I find that that's usually from the exception cases. So if we think about software design, right, people write their business requirements and that will lead to your detailed design, and your programmers will build off that detailed design. And then the QA department will use that and start doing their test cases. But usually what they have designed is, we want the user to go from point A to point B to point C. And they won't account for the human factor of what happens if they don't do what you want them to do. Like, hit the back button. They don't click the go back button on your screen. They'll hit, the back arrow on the browser. And that usually ends up breaking the flow. And so the same thing happens with data or any other journey. So data has a journey, customers have a journey, they all have a journey. And, sometimes they don't expect the data to be presented to them in a certain way. Or they're used to getting a spreadsheet one way, and they're used to uploading it and expecting the same results. So they don't check it anymore. And then something breaks and they don't know why. Well, the organization that gave you the spreadsheet decided to change their process. And so it's now not formatted the same way.
Right.
And so I've done work with Apple and Whirlpool and AIG warranties. And so there's thousands and thousands of warranty customers in all these organizations. And these organizations are trying to move themselves forward, but when they're working with third-party partners, they may have forgotten to tell them, oh yeah, we changed this. And the whole thing comes to a screeching halt.
Yeah, no, I get it. The outliers can be a huge issue. But I do like the theme that I'm picking up on here that I really like is this idea that one, you can't be reactionary, but two, maybe even more importantly than that is you have to really focus on what people actually want and what people actually do.
Yeah.
So maybe to summarize, like you have to be customer centered. You have to really engage with the humans that are going to use your system to make sure that it works for them rather than trying to assume they're going to conform to your system, whatever that ends up being.
Absolutely, 100%. And that's where the alpha and beta tests really come into play is you give it to the actual public. And it's not just looking at the data of they bounce from page A to page B to page C. You actually have like the heat maps and you actually have video of what they're actually
Right.
doing because you'll find the things in there and go, oh, it's like when people do surveys. People usually fail at doing surveys because they ask very specific questions as opposed to hearing the customer's story.
Right. Yeah, they try to get to a quantitative result and miss out on the qualitative
Yeah,
information.
exactly.
No, I love that. So those are the mindsets. And I know you've worked on a number of digital turnarounds, transformations, and things like that. So if a leader has those mindsets and they're moving in the right direction, what are the critical factors that they should be focusing on in terms of making that transformation successful?
So the biggest challenge that organizations face in transformation is a disconnect between what the executives want and what the rest of the organization wants. You know, you often see that transformations fail because there wasn't buy-in, which means that the rank and file will reject the direction because they weren't initially consulted and talked to and explained to. I had this classic example. So I was working for a major hotel group and the executive decided that they wanted to update their commission tool that the franchisees would send to them every single week so they get their check. And he
Right.
said, this is the process. Go build me a tool that does that. I said, well, I need to interview your frontline workers to make sure that that's actually what's happening. No, you don't. This is the process. So we built it exactly the way he wanted it. We implemented exactly the way he wanted it. And that first day, it failed. And he had franchisees calling him and the president of the company saying, where's my commission checks? Come to find out that the frontline workers were making all these changes to adapt to a system that didn't work for the new process. And he took that away from them. And
Yeah.
it failed miserably.
Yes, I mean, like to some point, what you're talking about there, the critical success factor is ensuring you understand the real process, not the defined process.
Yes. And the people, right? Because
Right.
the transformation occurs with people. It's not just the technology, it's the
Yeah,
people that use the technology. And so if you get their buy-in, then they will do whatever they can to help it succeed because they feel as though they're a
right,
part of the success, as opposed
right.
to just a marching drone.
Yeah, and being told what to do, they're being brought along as part of the process.
Yeah,
Yeah, again, that goes back to that human-centered mentality of if you put the human at the center of what you're doing, the results are going to be better.
yeah, exactly.
No, I love that. Now, maybe to kind of shift gears a little bit, something that you were talking about earlier is you being a neurodivergent leader with dyslexia and ADHD. I'm curious how that has affected your perspective or how your unique perspective has shaped your career. And maybe even as a build on that, what do you feel like organizations can do to better support and harness the talents of neurodiverse individuals?
That's a great question. If you are if you are neurotypical, then you will say, this is how I see things, and often don't take into account how others may see them or experience them,
Right.
right? We often see this in website design when it comes to accessibility or credit cards. This is the best example that you can just pull out your wallet right now. If you are over 40, you will have what's called presbyopia, which means that you begin to lose the ability to focus correctly near and far. So, exactly. So
Yeah.
I wear contacts. I'm very nearsighted. My vision is 5/400, which means I have to be within an arm length to see which direction the letter E is pointing. And so if pull out my credit card and try to read them with my contacts in, like I need to call customer service, I can't read that number with my
Yeah.
contact in. I have to go find my reading glasses to read it to figure out, So I actually called up American Express and said, hey, older Americans have a hard time reading this. You might want to redesign your card to have the phone number bigger so it's easier for us to read if we can't
Right.
find it in low light. So the same thing happens in websites. You get designers, and this is no slam against designers, but they want things to look really pretty. They think certain colors and certain design patterns should be the brand image. And they forget sometimes that those color combinations don't have the necessary contrast for them to be easily read.
Yeah.
So if you're putting, say, white letters on a yellow background, very low contrast. It may
And that
look
doesn't even
pretty.
take into account
Yeah,
colorblind people.
exactly. Exactly. And so when you are an executive, it's important to understand that up to 40% of your workforce is not going to be typical of the normal abled individual. So that means that their vision may be different, their hearing may be different, their cognitive abilities or cognitive challenges may be different. So for ADHD, I have processing issues. So when I read things, I cannot read aloud and it come out sounding normal. We have I guess a history in my family or tradition of me reading The Night Before Christmas every single night. My kids are adults now. I still read it to them. And to this day, I know what the words are, but because I have dyslexia, they get mumbled.
Yeah.
I have spelling issues. It's not because I'm dumb. It's because I have
No.
dyslexia. And so I have to use assistive technology to ensure that my spelling is correct. You will often hear people that are adamant about the spelling of certain words, there, and there. I know what they mean. I know the difference of them, but sometimes because of how fast I'm typing or how fast I'm writing, they may get messed up and they
All right.
will be identified as correct by, say, Grammarly, but it's not the right instance of it in that particular sentence. And so some people would say, are you an idiot? What's wrong with you? No, it's just I have a different mind processing than other people.
Right.
And there have been great examples of PhDs and Nobel Prize winners that had dyslexia and ADHD that can't spell to save their life.
Right.
They just can't.
Absolutely.
But they're brilliant individuals. And so if we understand that people don't experience, not everybody experiences the world the same way that you do. And we have a little bit more love and compassion for the fact that there may be different experiences and build the things that we're building with those in mind, I think you'll have a better customer experience and a happier workforce and a much more successful organization.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think from an innovation perspective, there's a huge amount of value in that diversity of thought, perspective, and experience. And I think that's part of the reasons you see some of the remarkable things coming out of neurodivergent people is because they look at the world differently. And because they look at the world differently, similar to what you were saying, they see the patterns others don't. Leaders can ignore that at their own risk.
I mean, how you and I got connected. I had posted about this one small company. They had noticed that some of their customers were saying that, hey, I can't get to your website. I'm getting these errors and I don't understand why. And I've had IT people come and take a look at this for forever, for like the last year, and nobody can find the problem. And I took a look at it and I realized that because of my experience in IT, I realized that there's different networks that everybody's going to be on. And if it's sporadically happening, that means that they may be on a similar network. And I realized that they were on Altice. And Altice is notorious for blocking websites and not letting the owner know. And it took me 10, 12 hours to prove that case for the owner so that they could actually file FTC and FCC complaints against Altice to try to get that blockage removed. But the other IT folks were just looking at the initial message and going, well, that's fine. There's no problems there. No, it's a fluke.
Right. No, I think that's great. Now, the other thing you were talking about is and some of the notes you sent me were other neurodivergent leaders. So I'm curious, what are some of the examples of where neurodivergence has actually contributed to the groundbreaking innovation in business or technology?
Steve Jobs.
Yeah, that's easy one.
Yeah. There very often you will find very dynamic leaders who are hyper focused that they will end up being neurodivergent because they need that hyper focus to constantly drill down into that one
Right.
particular area. One of the challenges that we face being ADHD, there's a whole host of different ways that we can exhibit our behavior. It's not just
Right.
black and white. It's not just a switch you have it, you don't.
Absolutely.
we,
Yeah.
we all, because of our genetic makeup, will have different combinations of these issues. So for me, I can get hyper focused and not hear a single thing anybody says to me while I'm focused on my task,
Yeah.
because it's very interesting to me and I want to solve it. It's this huge puzzle, and I can just lose complete track of time in trying to solve that one puzzle. Somebody will come over and start talking to me, and I may snap at them, and they say, "Why are you angry?" And I look at them and go, "I'm not angry. There's not an ounce of anger in me." But they hear that because I've been sucked out of my tunnel vision, and it's jarring,
Right. Yeah.
And so understanding, when you start to understand if somebody is, let's say, on the spectrum, autism spectrum, or ADHD, or dyslexic, or colorblind, or whatever else, you start to understand, okay, they're going to experience it a little bit differently. Let me ask the question: how do you experience this, and how can I help support you?
Show that curiosity and get to know people and understand their challenges a little bit better.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I like that. I love that. Well, I mean, I could definitely talk about this all day. It's been amazing to work, to have this discussion with you. We do have to wrap up here. Before we do, though, what is the best way for people to get into contact with you to collaborate, to work with you?
Sure. They can go to thecustomershop.com. And my email is robert@thecustomershop.com.
Awesome. Well, Robert, this has been a fantastic conversation. I always love focusing on the digital turnarounds and digital transformations, and then also just that diversity of thought and experience. I think that's a really powerful one in the innovation world. So very grateful to have you on. Very grateful for the insights. Really appreciate all your contributions.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me on your show.
And for everyone else who made it all the way to the end of the episode, if today's episode brought you value, remember to leave a like or a rating or a review on whatever platform you're listening from. And if you know anyone who is in the neurodivergent arena, who is looking for ways to better connect, send them this episode. Maybe it can help. And lastly, remember, take one actionable insight from today, apply it, and let us know how it goes, because we'd love to hear about your progress. So thanks again, Robert. Thanks again to all the listeners, and we'll see you all next time on Breakthrough Innovation.
Thanks so much.